Welcome everybody. You know good way that we are studying peripheral nervous system. In the previous classes, I have told you that peripheral nervous system that is made by 12 pair cranial nerves and 31 pairs spinal nerves. This means 31 pairs spinal nerves that is present in humans and 12 pair cranial nerves. So today we will take the knowledge about the 12 pair cranial nerves. Okay, on the whiteboard you are seeing that this is the cranial nerves. I want to tell you that cranial nerves is total 12 pairs, but a type of that cranial nerve is only 12. Number of cranial nerve is 12 pairs, but type of that cranial nerves is only 12. This means this all cranial nerves is present in pairs. Okay, which is that cranial nerves? This is the first cranial nerves, that is the olfactory cranial nerves. Okay, and from the nature of olfactory cranial nerves is to sensory. Okay, this means work of olfactory cranial nerve is to sense. Okay, this means nature of this olfactory cranial nerves is sensory, and origin of olfactory cranial nerve is olfactory lobe. Okay, origin of olfactory cranial nerve is olfactory lobe, and distribution of olfactory cranial nerves, this means where these olfactory cranial nerves present. This means distribution of cranial nerves, olfactory cranial nerves, is in nasal epithelium, olfactory mucosa you can say, and also you can say exudinarian membrane. Okay, exudinarian membrane. And what is the function of these olfactory cranial nerves? What is the function of these olfactory cranial nerves? Then olfactory cranial nerves, that function is smell, because this is present in nasal epithelium. This is present in our nose. Due to this, its function is smell. Okay. Okay. Next, that is the optic. Optic, that is related to eye. Okay, so its function, olfactory cranial nerves, its nature is also sensory. Okay, and origin of this optic cranial nerve is optic lobe. Okay, origin of optic cranial nerves is optic lobes, and distribution of optic cranial nerves, this means optic cranial nerves is present in retina of eye. Retina of eye. And what is the function? What is the function of optic cranial nerves? Then optic cranial nerve, that is related to eye, so its function is vision, to see anything. Okay, this is function of optic cranial nerves is vision. Okay, oculomotor cranial nerves, that's nature is motor. That's nature is motor, and origin of this oculomotor cranial nerve is midbrain. From the midbrain, this oculomotor origins. Okay, and also oculomotor that is present in, this means distribution of this oculomotor in the four eye muscle, for eye muscle. Okay, four eye muscle. Okay, so you know that 6 eye muscles happen. Okay, in that 4 eye muscle, this oculomotor present. Okay, and the function of this oculomotor cranial nerve is the movement of eye. This is movement of eye that is happening due to oculomotor cranial nerves. Okay, for that is the trochlear and pathic. Trochlear and pathic. Its nature is also motor and its origin is also mid-brain. Okay, trochlear cranial nerves, and it's a distribution. This means present of trochlear in superior oblique eye muscle. Superior oblique eye muscle, and function of trochlear and also pathic, that is also movement of eyes. Okay, fifth, that is the trigeminal, that is also called dentist nerve. Trigeminal cranial nerve, that is also called dentist nerve, and its nature is both mixed sensory and motor. Trigeminal cranial nerve's nature is both sensory and motor, and this origin of trigeminal cranial nerves in pons of our brain. From the pons of our brain, origin of trigeminal is the pons. Okay, and distribution of these trigeminal cranial nerves in skin of head and face, skin of head and face, upper and lower jaw, and also in teeth. This trigeminal cranial nerves present. And what is the function of this trigeminal cranial nerve? Then function of this is the sensation from lips, jaw, teeth, movement of lips. Okay, this is the function of trigeminal cranial nerves. And trigeminal cranial nerve, that is also called dentist nerve. See, that is the abducens. Okay, abducens, its nature is also motor. Okay, its nature is also motor, and origin of this abducens is pons. Origin of this abducens is pons, and distribution of these abducens cranial nerve in the external rectus eye muscle. Okay, and its function is also movement of eye. Okay, next, that is the facial cranial nerve. Facial cranial nerves, its nature is also motor, not motor. Of the facial cranial nerve, facial cranial nerves, its function is sensory and motor both. Its nature, facial cranial nerves nature is sensory and motor both, and origin of facial cranial nerves is also pons. Okay, and this facial cranial nerves, a distribution, this is present in 2/3 entrail of tongue and facial muscle, and function of this facial cranial nerve is to facial expression. If any facial expression is happening, that is due to facial cranial nerves. Sensation of taste, movement in neck, mastication of food. Okay, this is the function of facial cranial nerves. Next, that is the auditory cranial nerves. Auditory, that is related to eye, that is related to ear. Auditory is related to ear, and auditory cranial nerves, that's nature is sensory. Auditory cranial nerves, that's nature is sensory, and its origin is also pons. Okay, its origin also pons, and distribution of auditory cranial nerves. This means auditory cranial nerves distributed in internal ear. This is vestibular and cochlear part. And function of these auditory cranial nerves is to balancing hearing. Because auditory is related to ear, so its function is balancing hearing. Okay, next, that is the glossopharyngeal cranial nerves. And glossopharyngeal cranial nerves, that's nature is sensory and motor both. Okay, and origin of this glossopharyngeal cranial nerve is a medulla. And distribution in 1/3 posterior of tongue, muscle of pharynx and neck, and also in shoulder. Okay, and the function of this glossopharyngeal cranial nerve is sensation in taste and swelling. Okay, next, that is the vagus, 10th cranial nerves, that is the vagus cranial nerve, and its nature is also both sensory and motor. Okay, and origin of vagus cranial nerves is medulla, and this vagus cranial nerves, that is distributed in visceral organs like lungs, heart, gut, uterus, urinary bladder, blood vessels. Okay, in these visceral organ parts, vagus cranial nerves present, that is the 10th cranial nerves, and function of these vagus cranial nerves is movement in visceral organ. Why only movement in visceral organ? Because this vagus cranial nerve is present in visceral organ part. Due to that, its function is movement in visceral organ, contraction and dialysis in blood vessels. Okay. Next, that is the spinal accessory. Okay, and this spinal accessory, nature is motor. Spinal accessory cranial nerves, nature is motor, and this origin is also medulla. Okay, and distribution, this spinal accessory is distributed in vocal cords, larynx, neck, shoulder. Okay, and the function of this spinal accessory is movement in larynx, vocal cords. It is okay, and the last, that is the 12th, that is the hypoglossal cranial nerves. Like you know that hypo means below and glossal means tongue. This means hypoglossal cranial nerves, that is present below tongue, and its nature is motor, and origin from medulla and distribution in tongue, because hypoglossal, hypo means lower, glossal means tongue, this means this is present in below tongue, lower tongue, not below tongue. So due to this, its hypoglossal cranial nerve is distributed in tongue, and function of hypoglossal cranial nerves is movement in tongue. Okay, and also this is the 12 pair cranial nerves. Complete knowledge about the 12 pair cranial nerves. That is, this is the 12 pair cranial nerves, but type only 12. Such as in the previous classes, I have told you that in the cranial nerves, 12 pair cranial nerves, sensory nerves number is 3 pairs. You can say that first, second and third. Okay, these 3 pairs sensory and motor nerve fiber in numbers 5, such as first, second, third, 4, 5. Okay, and mixed, that's number is 4. Mixed, first, second, third, 4. Mixed, I am talking about the mix. This means both sensory and motor. This is the both. Okay, this is the 4. Mixed, this is both sensory and motor nerves. Okay, in this also very important point is this, that in the largest, in these 12 pair cranial nerves, largest or thickest cranial nerves is trigeminal. This is a very important. Now I am telling you 5 point that is a very necessary to remember, because that is also asked in many exams, all competitive exams, different type of competitive exams. Okay, so this point is very necessary to remember every woman's which is preparing, which is studying. Okay, that is why that is the largest or thickest cranial nerves is trigeminal. Okay, longest cranial nerves, that is 10th cranial nerves, that is the vagus. Okay, longest cranial nerves is vagus, and shortest cranial nerves, that is the abducens. Okay, shortest abducens, and thinnest cranial nerve, that is trochlear. Trochlear is the thinnest cranial nerves. This is the very important knowledge. Okay, this is the complete knowledge about the 12 pair cranial nerves.